It is abominable for a nation to compel the elderly to speak publicly about their health in demanding for their own money. That's the words of an obsessed former Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Kweku Osam. Professor Osam joined pensioners this morning to picket the Ministry of Finance to continue the demand for exemption from the domestic debt exchange program. According to Professor Osam, the decision to allow the elderly to suffer this fate is abominable. There is more on the day 6 activities in the following report. It is day 6 of the picketing at the Ministry of Finance. Pensioners may have weak bodies, but they are strong-willed, promising never to back. For 1 hour daily, they besiege the office of the Finance Minister to remind him that they want to be exempted from the domestic debt exchange program. The big picketer of the day is the former Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Kweku Osam. He also describes the situation of senior citizens picketing daily as abominable.
Why should we as a country get to the stage where an elderly man like him has to tell the whole world his health challenges? That's not right. That's not fair. That's not righteous. That's not kind for a country to do. It's abominable. It's an abomination.
Another picketer, a former General Secretary of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, Charles Fojo Ajiman, who is not a retiree, also joined the pensioners to press home their demands.
If we believe that they have a good cause, we should be joining them. And we should show a good cause to them that, yes, we support their cause. And I believe that, and as a matter of principle, I don't think that as a nation, we should let the aged who have carefully planned their pension to depend on their pension returns to be the ones whose money will be used.
Professor Osam called on the government to listen to growing calls to exempt pensioners.
You think I'll advise my children to invest in anything government? Of course not, I won't. I won't, because I say, well, you can go ahead and do it, but remember that it's risky. And nobody can convince me that, as I said, I'm not a finance expert, I'm not an economist, but right now, nobody can convince me in this country that investing in anything government is not risky.
Finance Minister Ken Oforiatta has, however, not changed his position. He wants pensioners to sacrifice to save the economy.
The challenge that we have is that we have an economic crisis.
But last Friday, former Chief Justice of the Republic, Justice Sophia Akufo, described this position as rude.
I find this wicked, I find it disrespectful, I find it unlawful, I find it totally wrong, period.
An 81-year-old retired medical doctor also appealed to the government.
Nobody would look after me. I lost my wife. I live alone. Who will look after me? That means government wants me to get rid of me.
Since the government is said to have achieved the set 80% subscription target for the program, the pensioners are hopeful the finance minister will exempt them.
I expect him to just say the pensioners has been exempted. He will be giving an update on what has happened, the results, fine. But I expect a statement to come, because at this time, you can't get us into the program. Okay. It's close. You can't get. Maybe previously, he was standing on his grounds, thinking that some people would come under, but now it's over. Okay. So we just have to exempt it. And we don't want to be self-exempt people, no.
But until then, the pensioners return on Tuesday to continue with the picketing. James Kwesi Aveji's report read to you. Now, individual Bondholders Association of Ghana are also set to picket the Finance Ministry to demand that government honors its obligation on bonds that are falling due. Last week, bonds worth more than 4 billion cedis matured, but the government is yet to pay, with some analysts warning government may have defaulted. The Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana says this is completely unacceptable and will picket the Finance Ministry for 4 days starting Monday, 20th February. Kweku Asante has more in the following report.
So after several hours of meeting here at the Greater Accra Region Police Command, the police have finally agreed that the Individual Bondholders Forum cannot go ahead and picket to demand that the Finance Ministry honor their obligations under the bond agreements that these individuals have with government. We know that last week, some of the bonds fell due. Government has not honored it still. According to lawyer Martin Kwebu and Dr. Akwete, who are leading the organization, they want government to know that this is not something they are going to allow, and that if government does not come out clearly stating exactly on what terms they are going to pay them, they will keep picketing at the Finance Ministry.
Okay, so technically we're not going on the same path. What we're simply asking of government is to honor the bonds that are due. Because before we went into the DDE program, we had an understanding that it's a voluntary process. And so government is expected that if one opts out, their coupons are honored. And so we are going strictly according to the documents we have and the assurance we had before this DDE program that all voluntary bondholders will not be penalized. They will be honored. And so that's just what we want. So we're not asking for anything out of what is due us, that's all.
Over the past week, the pensioners bondholders themselves have also been picketing at the Finance Ministry. They had such a boost when they were joined by former Chief Justice Sophia Ekufo. It does not seem to have made any difference, but this group thinks that this will now make a difference.
This is going to make a huge difference. You know, this is coming on the back of our liberation by Chief Justice Sophia Ekufo. You see, she gave us an impetus by coming to demonstrate, by picketing. So we are taking off from there. Look, Mr. Asante, it's not a joke. When we picket for 5 days, it's going to galvanize more support for our cause, because this is a cause that we must win at all costs, which is that individuals must be exempt. And government took a good step by saying they will honor existing bonds. So we're hoping that eventually then they will come to exemption, because, Mr. Asante, the point is that government is not presenting the agreement today to the IMF. They still have some time. Even if it were Friday, they can ask the IMF to give them some time to redraw the, the program, the debt exchange program, so that they specifically say individual bondholders are exempt. So we have a lot of time on our hands. And we believe that this picketing will help galvanize support for our cause.
Your point of view, the ministry has said that this is not compulsory, this is voluntary. So you can self-exempt and just expect that they will pay you when your bonds fall due. Why are you still insisting that they give you specific instructions that says that you are exempted?
Yes, Mr. Asante, that is better security. Saying individual bondholders are exempt is better security. Having seen that, as we speak now, some bonds matured on the 6th of February. That was last Monday, about 4.2 billion. The actual figure is 4,185 million, but let's round it up to 4.2 billion. Government hasn't paid, and government hasn't had the courtesy to even talk to us, to even say anything about when that money will be paid. So you see some of the disadvantages when government doesn't use the word exempt. So government needs to communicate with us. As we speak now, the failure to pay that money is causing some of our members palpitations, sleepless nights, so much uncertainty, harrowing pain, because people don't know when they will be paid.
Reporting from the Greater Accra Region Police Headquarters here in Accra, Kweku Asante for Joy News.
Now, my colleague from the research desk here at Joy News, Isaac Kofi J, joins me in studio with some details. Now, Kofi, we're learning that the target set by government, they wanted 80%. That has been achieved. How did we get here? What details do we know of that?
Well, so the target was at least 80%. So if you set a target, this is the minimum, the threshold actually.
Okay.
So the 80%
so it's the minimum,
okay, that government wants to attain and deem this whole debt exchange as successful.
Okay.
We understand, and sources tell us that they've actually been able to achieve more than this 80% target that they are looking for. So how come government was able to achieve the 80% when we've had several groups coming out to say they will not subscribe? Let's look at the next slide, and we'll see that the first group to actually give government their consent that they are actually going to participate in this domestic debt exchange was the Ghana Association of Bankers. They were the first. They did that based on certain conditions. The first condition was that governments were supposed to pay them 5% coupon rate instead of the 0% that government wanted to do at the initial stage. And then they also said that the governments will scrap any clause in the amendments in the domestic debt exchange document or the law governing this whole exchange, that government can solely or unilaterally decide on certain things that can probably affect them without their input. That was number one. The same thing was the Ghana Association of Insurers. They also came on board based on the same assumptions and based on the same conditions, actually, as we say. The Ghana Security Industries also on this same condition that the bankers reached with the government. They also came on board to actually, be part of the debt exchange program. Now, we are getting this more than 80% participation because of these three groups that we see on the smart wall right now. And then some individual bondholders we are learning that are, nicodemously, signing on to the debt exchange. But majority of them, especially those who are retirees, are saying that government should give them 100% exemption. They do not want any quote-unquote better offer from the government. They don't want any, 10%, 15%. They cannot let go of the 3% or 5%. They don't want any haircut in this situation because the president had actually assured them in October 2022 that there will be no haircut. And if you hear of any haircut, you should regard it as rumors. Now, the retirees are saying that government or presidents, you said this, you gave us this assurance in October. Please help us. Don't include us into this as part of this debt exchange.
So once the government has achieved 80%, which was the minimum, and we learned that more than that, why are they still not then coming out to say that the pensioner bondholders and the individual bondholders have been exempted?
Well, if you look at what the finance minister about 2 weeks ago, when he actually gave he spoke to the public and he said that you can actually self-exempt. But individual bondholders, especially the retirees, are saying they don't want self-exemption because the finance minister made mention, he said that we cannot guarantee the tradability of your bonds. Okay. That is the condition that they don't want to find themselves in, that I am out of the program, I do not know the future of my bonds. I want government to come out the way it came out to say that pension funds, 100% exempted. They want the same thing. Now, if you look at this chart, Brace, we've been tracking, the debt exchange program. About 31 billion of bonds to be restructured will mature this year. So if you look at 2023,
31 billion.
Over 31 billion that we're talking about. You heard Martin people saying that government actually had to, default on about 4.4 billion Ghana cedis. If you look at the graph, this shows. So if you look at February alone, we are looking at close to 7.6 billion Ghana cedis that government is supposed to pay. This is just the principal. We're not even talking about interest. So if you look at March, government is supposed to pay 4.91 billion as principal again. Then it declines to 1.21 billion, then 1.3, 1.5. Then we have about 8 billion in September. Will drop to 2 billion in November. Then at the dying numbers of the year or at the ending of the year, government will pay close to 3.6 billion. This is just interest. Now go back to the 2023 budget and you realize that government, if government is not successful with the domestic debt exchange program, is going to pay close to 52 billion Ghana cedis as just interest payments. Okay. Now, of these 52 billion Ghana cedis we're talking about 31 billion will go into payment of interest on domestic bonds. Okay. So the amount we're talking about here is so huge for government that if the restructuring is not successful, it will be very, very difficult to proceed and get the 3 billion IMF program. Okay. Mind you, if you're watching us at home, government has been able to achieve the 80% because we have bankers on board, insurance companies on board, and securities, and some individual bondholders.
So this 3 billion will give us around some 30, 33, 34 billion Ghana cedis. And we have to pay how much this year?
So we have to pay 52 billion. That's the total.
Which means that if without the restructuring,
yeah,
the IMF money cannot even help us.
It will just be a drop in the ocean because if the 52 billion Ghana cedis, 21 billion for external debt service and interest payments, then 31 billion for domestic, you know. So if you look at 31 billion Ghana cedis and you ask yourself, and the kind of situation we find ourselves in, governments will find it very, very difficult. But they have three options. In the restructuring process that we're talking about, we've been focusing more on the debt. But mind you, governments can restructure. We have one that we call the fiscal adjustments, the structural adjustments, and then we have the debt restructuring. So government can focus on fiscal adjustments. The individual bondholders have given government so many alternatives. Say if you follow what we've given to you, you can save about 85 or 82 billion cedis, you know, in terms of fiscal expenditure in 2023. So
interesting.
There you have it.
So this is the health of our debt, and if nothing is done
about it,
it means that this year alone.
But Brace, before we even started this debt exchange, it was around 300 billion. Now our debt level is over 575 billion Ghana cedis. It keeps growing. It keeps growing. So we have to do something real.
It means that government really has to get this through, else, as you see there from the presentation by Kofi, it will be difficult for government to honor, you know, the payment of even maturing bonds and interest on them as well. Thank you so much, Kofi. Now, you're still watching Joy News Prime.